If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Well, hello everybody. Hey Cody, how are you doing this week?
Good, man. How you doing?
Doing great. What you been up to?
Oh, just chilling. Just watching some movies.
So, besides our movies that we had to do for film club, were there any movies that you watched this week that you want to discuss?
Well, I was gonna ask you that because I know you watched something kind of new. I saw what's it called? I already forgot what it is. Oh, The Assistant.
Oh, yeah.
I was gonna
Sorry.
ask you about that.
For a second, I thought you were talking about Hidden Figures. I'm like, wait, what?
Oh no, I want you to talk about that as well. But
Oh, no, yeah, I did
but
watch
The
The
Assistant.
Assistant. Yeah,
I
The
just wanted to
Assistant.
hear what you thought about it.
Well, I had a friend tell me about The Assistant, and it has, I'm already forgetting her name from Ozark. What's her name? It's, the
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I just can't think of her name either.
Julia Garner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Julia
Her.
Garner's in it, and I loved her role in Ozark, and I know that she's been in some like upcoming movies or whatever, but someone, like I said, my friend recommended this one, and it's interesting. I mean, it literally like doesn't have like that much dialogue. Actually, really no dialogue at all, kind of. Yeah, it's just pretty much like Julia Garner just doing office work for this, I would say acting company, like for like a producer, director kind of guy. And the whole like, vibe you're getting from the movie is that she's, scheduling being his assistant for him, but you see these little side scenes where she's cleaning up like a couch, or she's stocking water bottles, and she's doing all of these things, and a lot of young girls are going into the office and they're in there for a little while, and they're kind of getting this whole kind of putting two and two together what this kind of director guy does. And so it kind of in a way kind of relates a little bit to the Me Too movement, I would say. Just kind of like that whole Harvey Weinstein situation. But I don't want to spoil it too much, but it's a good movie. I really did enjoy it.
Interesting.
And it's quick. It's like only like an hour and 25 minutes maybe.
Oh,
So
that's short.
yeah, it's
Cool.
a short.
Yeah, I'll check it out. It sounds pretty good.
It's on
Looks
it's on Hulu too. So
nice.
if anybody wants to watch it. Yeah, I enjoyed it. And then like I said before, I watched Hidden Figures too. I've seen it before, but it was just on TV, and it's one of those times where it's like, oh, I haven't seen this movie in a while, so I want to watch it. And it's
Yeah, you
cool.
said that was your favorite movie of 2016, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
That
I haven't seen the whole thing, but it was good. I do need to watch it all the way though, because I've only seen I think some of it, but I liked it.
I think like, just my like it's weird to say like favorite part, but like a part that I enjoy is, where this like main like character like in the movie, she's like having to run back and forth like a half mile from building to building just to go to the bathroom because that's where the colored bathroom is for her.
Oh yeah,
And then
yeah,
like,
that sucks.
the main director for it just he keeps getting like pissed off because he's like, where the hell is she going? Like, why is she, we're like in this race against Russia. Like, we don't have time for this or anything. And then, he finally calls her out and she just unleashes everything. And it's like one of those situations where when she's like just kind of yelling at him, I like grab my phone. I'm like, this is really awkward, but I understand. So,
Yeah.
and then the next scene, he's like using like a crossbar or whatever a crowbar to like hammer it down. So yeah, it's good. It's a really good movie.
Cool. I'll have to revisit it at some point.
Do it.
And when I saw you watched it, it reminded me, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't think I ever actually finished that movie, but I'll have to do that.
Hell yeah, do it. Were there any
Cool.
other movies that you watched this week?
I watched a few. I watched a few Robert Altman movies.
Oh yeah.
I just kind of. I don't know what happened exactly, but I just kind of went on a Robert Altman kick, and I'm trying to watch as many of his movies that I can because I've been really enjoying them. Um, and I watched Three Women. Um, that was the first Robert Altman movie I've ever seen. It was over 10 years ago, and it's like the only one I've seen. And I love that movie. And so I watched The Player and McCabe and Mrs. Miller and The Long Goodbye. And they're all good. They're all pretty good. I think especially McCabe and Mrs. Miller, I really love that movie a lot. So it's worth checking out if
What's
you.
the genre again for these movies?
Well, they're all kind of different. So McCabe and Mrs. Miller is a western. Well, it's kind of like an anti-western sort of movie um, about a gambler and a prostitute who become business partners in this small old west mining town. Um, and then The Long Goodbye is kind of it's sort of a noir kind of movie with a detective, and I think that one's based on a book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, they're good. He's made a lot of different kinds of movies, and um, so far I've liked all the ones that I've seen. And I know there's some that he's made that are, you know, not as highly regarded, but he's made a lot of movies.
What movie was it again that you were telling me earlier this week how it kind of has like a different look in how they filmed it? Which one was that?
Oh, McCabe and Mrs. Miller.
Okay.
Yeah, so that one, I was reading that they purposely, I think they damaged the film or they did something to it to give it like this haziness to it. And watching the movie, it feel like the movie itself feels very dreamlike in a way, and I think a lot of it has to do with the cinematography and just the way it looks and like the color palettes and everything. And it has a really unique kind of aesthetic to the whole thing. Um, but it's beautiful, and even though it's, it kind of looks sort of like hazy and it just has like that old, like he wanted to make it seem old, and yeah, it was unique the way he decided to film it, and I think uh, it made it even better.
You got to credit
It's
like
good.
yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely very creative and very like he was really anti Hollywood. Like he just did whatever he wanted to do, and um he had a lot of different kind of just interesting creative decisions that I think a lot of people probably wouldn't do, or he just and he made so many different kinds of movies. Like when he made MASH, like that was his biggest hit, and well, really kind of his only like huge hit of a movie that he made. And then immediately after that, he made this movie that I haven't seen it yet, but it was something completely different, very low budget, and didn't do well at all. Um, and that's just kind of how his career went. It seems like he made a lot of just interesting movies, and um, he also did. I haven't seen Nashville and Shortcuts yet, but I'm really excited to watch them. But you know how we watch like Magnolia
Yeah.
and like some of these other movies that have these huge cast of characters
Oh
and
yeah.
different storylines going on, and they're long movies. Well, his movie Nashville that came out in 1975 was pretty much, I'm pretty sure, is one of the very first movies to ever do that. Where there's like 25 main characters in the movie,
Oh wow.
and I think it's just short of 3 hours. I think it's like 2 hours and 45 minutes or something like that. Um, but yeah, so yeah, he's an interesting guy. Um, and yeah, I'm just excited to watch more of his movies. But I would definitely say you should watch McCabe and Mrs. Miller, or even The Long Goodbye. I think you'd like both those movies.
Oh, I definitely want to, especially the way that you described it and how
Yeah.
they did the cinematography for it. I just feel like it's so risky, like doing that, like him just going up to like the company where being like, "Hey, so for this movie, this is what I want to do. I'm gonna probably damage the film a little bit, but just to give it to look like that." And they're probably like, "Wait, hold up a second." So pretty risky, but I'm excited to see like what it would look like. So
Yeah. He's a risky boy,
yeah, I
you
don't blame
might
him.
say. Yeah. But yeah, that's all I really watched this week. So that was fun. Um, yeah. Anything else? Anything else that you watched, or anything else exciting going on, or
Uh,
any news?
I mean, I guess just some like stuff like I've seen, where I get emails basically just talking about how, some of these movie theaters, they're excited to have you back, and they're talking about all the procedures they're going to be going and doing for cleanliness and everything. And they're like, check to see if your theater is open, and then you go, because the movie theaters near me are Cinemark, and I go and look at the list, and it's like two theaters like in all of Texas. So it's like,
Yeah.
well, I guess we're gonna have to hold out a little bit longer. So,
Yep.
but
Well, it seems like it'll be pretty soon. I mean, as long as everything goes as planned.
yeah, it's definitely gonna be
So,
these classic movies for sure, though. Which I don't have a fine with it. It'll be fun to see Jaws or
oh yeah.
Indiana Jones on like such a big screen, and you have the surround sound and everything. Like I'm down for that, but when they announce that Tenet is going internationally first and then it's coming over here, it's like, oh man, I want to see the movie. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna suck. Extra bad knowing that everyone else has seen it
oh yeah,
in the world.
and everybody's gonna be like, well, you're gonna have some people probably tweeting about it and everything, so gotta stay away from those spoilers. But it probably won't be too bad. So, but I know there's another movie that's coming out this month. Oh, it comes out the 14th of in August on Netflix. Have you heard about the movie Project Power?
Yes, I have, but I haven't seen the trailer or whatever pop up, but I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, I haven't watched the
What
trailer
is it?
yet. I just kind of want
Oh,
to watch the movie and not have really any idea. But all I know is it's basically
nice.
about a former soldier that teams up with a cop to find the source behind a dangerous pill that's providing people like with temporary superpowers.
Hmm.
So Jamie Foxx is
Okay.
in it, Machine Gun Kelly, Joseph
Oh,
Gordon-Levitt, which Joseph Gordon-Levitt I feel like hasn't been in a lot of movies lately. So it's going to be interesting
yeah.
to have him back on the screen. Because it's funny because I was thinking about it like maybe like a couple months ago. I was like, man, I haven't seen Joseph Gordon-Levitt like in forever.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't even remember what the
I
last
guess he
movie
was in Knives Out,
that I
but he
saw.
was just
Oh, yeah,
he had a cameo.
that's true. Yeah. Huh.
Endgame, he was a security guard.
Yeah, I think the last like big movie that he did was that Snowden
Yeah,
movie from like 2016,
exactly. But I feel like the
which I never saw that, but
yeah he was in like I feel like in the early like late 2000 or like early 2010 or something like that. He was in 50-50 and Dark Knight
hmm.
Rises, Looper, Lincoln, like all this kind of stuff. But G.I. Joe, Rise of the Cobra.
Yeah,
uh,
classic.
yeah. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see him back on the screen, and the movie sounds interesting, so I'm looking.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. Um, yeah, I might check it out.
But it's one of those things that we discussed like the other week. Is it going to be one of those good Netflix movies, or is it going to be one of those, So we'll have to see, I guess.
I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I just have seen like the poster. I haven't watched the trailer, but I'm gonna take a guess that it's gonna be bad. But who knows? Maybe it'll be
Maybe
good.
like one of those Bright movies or something like that. The one that had like Will
Yeah.
Smith in it, where it looked like it was
Hmm.
maybe interesting, but then it didn't do so well or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised either, but who knows? So,
Who
yeah.
knows?
Uh,
I guess we'll have to find
yeah,
out.
that's so true.
But we'll probably watch it so that we could talk about it on the podcast
Yeah,
at least. So
definitely.
I think I'll at least watch it for that.
Well, the last thing I want to discuss before we jump into our movies is you've seen that trending video that's going around Twitter and stuff talking about that Star Wars fan that is changing the title names.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was funny.
So what do you think about it?
It made a whole lot of sense. Like watching it, I was like, oh, you have a real good point here.
I th
Maybe a couple of them that didn't sound as good. I mean, I was like, there's maybe a few where I was like, I don't know about that, but definitely some of them I was like, yeah, I can see it.
Does it make sense because it's after the fact, or like if they did it would have been like, oh, okay, yeah, like sure. But I think it's more like after the fact. Now we're like, oh yeah, that makes complete sense. So,
Yeah.
I mean, episode 1 they have Rise of Skywalker. Episode 2 is Revenge of the Sith. Episode 3 is Attack of the Clones. Episode 4 was Return of the Jedi. Episode 5 was The Force Awakens. Episode 6 was The Last Jedi. Episode 7 was Empire Strikes Back. Episode 8 was A New Hope. And then Episode 9 was A Phantom Menace. So it's kind of funny because Episode 1 and 9, they just yeah, they just
Flip
flipped.
those.
But yeah, some of them make sense. Like when I first saw, I was like, oh, I see what you did there. But I mean,
Hmm.
it's only after the movie do you find out like really about you know that title or whatever. So or like watching them all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it makes some sense, but then hearing you say them again, I was like, yeah, but it doesn't sound as good. It doesn't sound right.
no, yeah, I know.
Like, is there something wrong here?
It's totally like just like it makes sense for fans, but like someone watching the movie like or hasn't seen it, it just it doesn't really matter that much. But I just thought it was
Yeah,
interesting. A little
yeah,
different take on it. So,
agreed.
was there
That
anything
was
else
good.
that you want to talk about?
No, I think that's it. I don't have anything else. Nothing else on the agenda.
Well, this week we watched Godfather Part 1 and Part 2.
Yes, we did.
And this was my first time watching them. And, we were talking about it like after like we saw Part 1. I was like, man, it's just so interesting to like think about how, there's so many pop culture like references to these movies. And so like when I was watching, I was like, man, like I feel like I've seen it like in this movie, like this scene, I feel like I've seen it like in this cartoon, or like, oh, like this, like what they're doing right now is like super dramatic, and I can see how they're doing it like in some of these other shows or something. And so I feel like I'm really glad that Godfather is as big and popular as it is, because it really shaped the way that a lot of movies and cartoons or whatever continue to be and stuff. So I like that a lot.
Hmm. Yeah, it's one of those movies that like you who had never seen it before, it's such a huge part of pop culture that even though you haven't seen the movie, you've seen so many things from the movie, like even if it is just like spoofs in like The Simpsons or whatever it might be.
Zootopia.
Like you've Zootopia, pretty much like every show. It's referenced in so many movies. I've been watching The Sopranos, and like they reference The Godfather and Goodfellas and all that like every episode, pretty much. It seems like, at least. There's always references or nods to those movies because they owe so much to them, and I think a lot of things probably wouldn't exist if The Godfather never happened. And I think it's funny too because Marlon Brando is so good. He's so good in this role, in this movie. But I think because it's almost I feel well, I think it could have been funny if the wrong person did that voice that he does. Like I could see it being funny if someone else was trying to do it like in the movie, but he pulls it off and did such a great job in that movie. But then, seeing all these TV shows and other movies and just people in day to day life just doing impressions of it and everything kind of makes it funny. And so watching the movie, like I just instantly start thinking of all the times I've ever heard people do the famous Vito Corleone voice.
Oh, it's so good.
So
And it
yeah.
fits that role so well, and his demeanor and everything. It's really impressive, and I every time that he was on the screen, I just wanted him to talk, and I just wanted to hear him in his role and everything. So, but yeah, I mean, this movie's really long, so there's like so much really to talk about and stuff. But
Yeah, they're they're all very very long, and that's part of the reason why we skipped on part three for now.
yeah,
We might I might watch it. I do want to watch it in the future, but I've only heard mostly negative things about part three, um and they're just so long that I was like, I might wait to watch it later. But if if you think that if anyone listening thinks that we're missing out on part three, let us know if it's actually if it's actually great. But
tweet
like I
tweet
said,
to us or
we'll watch
comment
it.
on our YouTube
Tweet
video.
us, tweet at us,
Let us
or
know.
comment. Yeah.
Or even respond to us
Yes.
on Letterboxd and be like, hey, yeah, you need to watch this. Because we're down for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll do it at some point. But yeah, it's just so long. I mean, it's these movies together is like what 6.5 hours,
Yeah.
almost 6.5 hours. So, but for me, I feel like with this movie, it is really long,
It's
but
enjoyable.
yeah, it didn't really like I didn't feel the length in some ways, and at the same time I did
Hmm.
because there's so much going on. There's a lot to follow and so many characters and this huge this family. There's different side plots and things happening that keep it engaging the whole time I was interested. So it didn't really feel like a 3 hour long movie.
Mm.
But
I think that's what I liked about like watching it was the fact that they had like the black screen before they went to like the next scene or something like that. Because then I was able to
mhm.
kind of, either it was like a good breakup in that point. So I was able to kind of like be like, okay, so what's happening or whatever, and then I would be able to kind of process it to continue to go on.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was nice to have that. Um, and especially like with how long the movie is, then they kind of felt like mini episodes like within the movie when they did
Mhm.
that. So I was like, okay, so like this episode is done. Now we're going on to the next episode. And I feel like it blended together so well. So
Yeah, I was thinking that too. To me, it did that so well, and it reminded me of what it feels like to watch a TV show when you're binging it, and you could sit down and watch like 5 episodes because it's so good, and there's so many characters and things going on, and the way it transitions and all those things. I thought that this movie felt so it felt so grand, and there's just it felt like watching something like Game of Thrones or something where there's just so much going on and it's all meaningful and it all has purpose. Um, but it's just it's a 1 3 hour movie.
yeah, exactly.
So I really like that about it.
So you've seen part one. You haven't seen part two before, right? Just part one?
Yeah. Yeah, I watched part one probably like years ago, something like that, and but I never watched part
So
two
with this being
or
like your
part three.
second time watching part one, like do you like this more like being older so you can understand it a lot more, or do you still feel
Yes.
like your first time ever seeing that it was really exciting and stuff?
So when I first saw it, I really liked it, and I thought it was great. Um, but watching it again after so long and being older, like you said, and seeing so many other movies, since then, I feel like it had a much bigger impact on me watching it again now, almost like 10 years later. Um, and I think when I watched it before, I'm pretty sure I watched it on TV, so I don't know if I was like fast forwarding through, like I feel like I recorded it on
Oh,
something and
okay.
was probably like fast forwarding through commercials, and it probably wasn't like the best viewing experience, and I don't think I got the most out of
Mm.
it the first time, and especially with so much to follow and pay attention to. Um, and this time, I feel like I got so much more out of it and kind of understood these characters more and their motives and all that. So yeah, I loved it.
I feel like for me it's like another one of those situations like with Total Recall where like people have maybe seen it, but like it's been so long. So like when you watch it again, you're like, oh man, like yeah, I watched this when I was like 14 or 12 or something like that. But now that I'm older, I really appreciate the movie a lot more. So from my perspective, it's really nice like being able to see it for the first time, like with me being older. And so like I can like already
Mhm.
like kind of appreciate it. And so yeah, like I loved the suspense like in the movie where you know something's gonna happen and you're like waiting for it to happen, like whether someone's gonna get killed or like a job is gonna go bad. And so you're like
Mhm.
waiting and it's like this build up and you're like, okay, I know it's gonna happen, just do it, just do it. And then when it finally happens, it's like this like relief. You're like, okay, I just saw like six people just get shot in the head, but at least I knew like that was gonna happen. But
Yeah.
still like throughout the movie, like too, like I feel like you're still like really um you don't know exactly where it's gonna go. You maybe have an idea. And so like it's a lot of guessing, like, okay, so what is Michael gonna do like in this scene? Like, all right, what is his brother gonna do? And so like I really loved all the different character developments and how they intertwine together. And so
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really um I think when I watched this movie 10 years ago, I was excited to watch it because I think I saw Goodfellas before this, and it was one of my favorite movies. Um and I was like, oh, I gotta watch The Godfather, and I want to watch more of these mafia kind of
yeah.
movies. And watching this one, I think the thing that I didn't appreciate as much that I do now is just all the family relationships between these brothers and the dad and the sister and just all these different characters that come together and the different relationships that they have. I thought was so entertaining, and it felt so just authentic.
Yeah, genuine
Um,
too.
yeah, yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I think probably my favorite part of this movie is um, the transformation of Michael's
Oh
character.
yeah.
Who he was in the beginning of the movie, and then what happens with Vito, how they go after him, and he almost died, and then eventually he dies. But how Michael kind of steps up, and he he definitely changes a lot
Oh yeah.
through this movie.
You can totally
And
just see him going from like this t-shirt wearing, just casual looking guy to like the end of the movie. He's just like standing there with his soldiers or whatever in just like a suit and a suit vest, button up tie, I mean button up shirt with a tie and everything.
mm,
And so just to see that, yeah, and especially like in part two as well, seeing that continue to transfer and it for him to get deeper and deeper into the family business was really impressive to see.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it was pretty
Al
good.
Pacino did a good job.
Yeah, he was really great. Uh, I loved I loved Al
I
Pacino
think
in
maybe
this.
Eddie Murphy in that role.
Eddie Murphy. Yeah, I think you're
Right,
right.
right.
Eddie Murphy
Chance the
could have
Rapper.
done better. Absolutely. But no, he did great, and I think that he. It's a nice watch. It like I like watching, some of Al Pacino's older movies again and seeing because now I like whenever I think of Al Pacino, like I think of Al Pacino today, and so many times like now his performances, like he just is almost just always over the top,
Yeah.
and everything he's always yelling and stuff, and it's fun to watch him be a little more subdued and kind of quiet. But he also, brings it to, dials it up to 11 sometimes, especially in the second part. There's parts where he's yelling and I'm like, okay, that's the yelling Pacino that I know. but but I think he did a really great job. And everyone, I think that the cast was so. I mean, obviously Marlon Brando is iconic,
Hmm.
one of the most iconic freaking uh, roles in any movie ever. I love James Caan as Sonny, the
The oldest son.
the hot-headed
Yeah.
the hot-headed brother, yeah. And Robert Duvall as Tom Hagen.
Yeah, I really loved
I
Robert. His role was
yeah,
perfect.
he was great, and I just liked his character. I love how he's just so loyal to the family and to Vito, and then even when changes, he's still so loyal. Well, I guess it's more part two, but yeah, I love his character. Um, Diane Keaton's good. It's just a great cast. And one thing I thought was interesting is the production of this movie. They're um, the studio the studio didn't want I'm pretty sure they didn't want anyone. They didn't want Pacino. They didn't want Brando. Um, I don't know who else they didn't like, but they wanted. I think they wanted Robert Redford in the movie, which I love Robert Redford, but it's just funny because there's so many things that they didn't want, and Francis Ford Coppola had to fight like pretty much every day going into making this movie. I mean, he had to fight to get what he wanted, and thankfully he was able to do pretty much everything he wanted with the movie. But he had to really fight for it. They didn't want the cast. They didn't want it filmed in New York. They wanted it filmed in St. Louis because it would be cheaper. And they didn't want to make it a period piece because they didn't want to spend the extra money. They're like, just make it, modern day, 70s. It'll be fine. Um, and even when they were filming, they didn't trust Francis making it. They're like, what? They didn't understand even what they were making at the time. They're like, what are we doing? Like, what is this movie even? And apparently, they even had like a backup director, kind of like ready to replace him at any moment because they just did not trust what he was doing, which I think is so interesting because he ended up making one of the greatest movies of all time and one of the most influential movies
It's
that's
like the
ever
third
been
highest
made.
rated movie on Letterboxd, right? I know
Yeah, well,
I
and
know Parasite overtook it this last year, but it was the highest rated movie.
well, I on IMDb, Godfather is number two on the top 250, and Godfather Part Two is number three on the top
What's
250.
number one?
Uh, Number one is Shawshank
Oh yeah.
Redemption, and then also on the American Film Institute, The Godfather is listed as the second greatest American movie of all time, just after Citizen Kane is number one. So yeah,
It's an iconic movie.
it's iconic. It's one of the most important movies that's ever been made. Uh, and and watching it, you can totally see why.
Yeah, with this iconic of a movie, with us doing this film club like the last like couple months or whatever, a lot of times like I suggest like some of these movies to like watch with my wife and everything, and she's like, ah, maybe, whatever. But this one, like I told her I was watching, and she looked at me, she's like, I've heard about this movie and I really actually want to watch it. And so she watched the first part. She hasn't watched part two, but she got done watching it last night, and she looked at me. She's like, "That was such
Nice,
a good movie," and so it
nice.
really is for anybody. And so
Yeah,
it's a
it's great.
it's a really enjoyable movie. So I was obviously impressed, and it makes complete sense why really it is rated as high as it is, and the the awards that it won and everything. So, but I think like one of going back to the movie, I think one of my favorite parts of the movie is when uh he gets done killing Connie's husband, and then she comes in screaming in the room and everything like that, and accuses Michael of the murder, and then she's telling Kay, Michael's wife, about it, and then he has to like basically look her in the face, and they're having this argument, and then he just, Al Pacino, Michael, like slams on the table and says enough. And like that part, like it just like I was like just looking away for like a split second, and like it brought me right back into the movie. Like it grabbed my attention when he did that, and that whole scene, like right at the end, was just I really just topped it off of how much I liked the movie.
Yeah, that was a great scene. I think that there's so many scenes in this movie that are just perfect. I think my favorite scene is when he goes to the diner and he kills that
Oh
cop
yeah.
and the other guy. What's his name? I love that part so much because it was when I was watching it, it felt so intense to me. Like, and I knew, I've seen it before. I know exactly what happens, but just the build up. He's at the table and he goes to the bathroom, gets the gun, and they walked him through like how he's supposed to do it and everything. But I really enjoyed that part, and really like all of the hits. Every time anyone gets killed, it's always it is always done so well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like the practical effects with like the gunshots and the blood and everything. It was really impressive. I thought it
Oh
looked
yeah.
really good, um, and a lot of just iconic kills. A lot of choking people and and coming up behind people and killing
Well,
them.
especially that
Uh,
beginning scene when you have when he Vito is going and telling like his friend to go and act like he doesn't want to be a part of the business anymore, and he's not happy with Vito, and then they end up, Brasi or whatever, he gets his hand stabbed with a knife, and they
oh yeah,
kill him from behind or whatever, and that whole scene was like, well,
that
all
was
right, we're
crazy.
starting the movie, let's go. So yeah, and I think like I saw like a article where it was talking about that Star Wars when Leia killed Jabba, like that's where they got their inspiration from with how
Mm,
Brazi was choked from behind, which another one of those cultural references or whatever. But I mean, it's kind of similar, but it's interesting to see like if Star Wars really did want to get their inspiration from that scene. But
that's funny.
yeah,
That's cool. Yeah, it's a film that's inspired so many different movies and um in so many different ways, for sure. So that's cool.
why do you think like even today like it's still such like a big movie?
I think it it's just a movie that, well, I think it holds up. Like I can see how, like there's some movies that, might have been big, that were a big deal in the 70s or 60s or whatever, and they're a big deal at the time, and maybe watching them for the first time now, if you've never seen them, like some would be like, okay, like I can see how people would like this then, but I feel like it's been, this kind of movie has been done better, like over the past 50 years or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten movies that are similar but better. But The Godfather, there really hasn't been another movie quite like it that is even really close to as good. I mean, Goodfellas is another mafia movie, but I think that movie is quite different. Um, so I don't really like there's comparison there, but it's a different movie. But there hasn't been anything quite like The Godfather that's as good as The Godfather. Even though there's been so many different movies that try to do the same thing. Um, like there's that movie I haven't even seen it, but remember that movie Gotti that came out a couple years ago? It looks so
Oh
bad.
yeah.
But they're still, they still make. It seems like we're not getting as many like mafia movies like this anymore. But whenever they happen, like there's some good ones, but I don't think there's been one as good really as the original Godfather, and I think it's because of just the scale and scope of the movie, um, and just so many great performances, and the dynamics of the family is just it's really interesting, um, and yeah, it has great dialogue. The writing is great, good story. Um,
I feel like a lot of these movies they don't. I think they really do try to do like the whole mafia like side of it, but it definitely is not going to be the same as like Godfather. I mean, you have um The Departed that kind of has a little like aspect of that, but it's not nearly as like ingrained in like this whole like mafia kind of thing, like this drug lord or whatever aspect of it. This is more like The Departed talks in a different perspective, like shown in a different perspective. And so for me, I feel like
mhm.
that's why The Godfather is always going to stand alone from the rest of some of these movies, just because it has a whole sole focus on the actual family-esque of it.
Yeah, yeah, and this movie it's just so authentic, and I think I don't know, like I'm not super familiar with Italian American culture and all that, but I've seen it enough in movies, and and this just seems the most authentic I've seen it in a movie like it, and and apparently they worked with the mafia. I don't know exactly to like what extent, but apparently they weren't supposed to say mafia even in the first movie. But they had, like these authentic locations that the mafia pretty much showed them, like hey, I don't know exactly what they did. I can't remember. I didn't read everything about it, but there's a lot of things that they worked together on, and Francis Ford Coppola was really really strict about what he wanted, and he wanted to make it authentic. Um, and I think at the time, there had been other movies kind of like it about the mafia or whatever. But whenever those movies were made, they always starred Jewish actors in the movies, and this was one of the first movies to ever really have, so many Italian American actors um, playing these roles. So I think it just added, an extra level of authenticity to the movie, which I enjoyed,
And he had a lot of
appreciated.
his movies like they won a lot of awards as well.
Yeah.
So it makes complete sense. Overall, like in his nominations, he had 80 and he won 23 just in the Academy.
It's crazy.
17 Golden Globe, 11 BAFTA awards. So it's really impressive. And you can definitely like tell in a lot of his movies that he has directed. Francis Ford Coppola just, you know, they're good. A really good movie.
Yeah, and we watched Apocalypse Now not too long ago,
Exactly.
and that was a great one.
You can definitely see like the
Um,
style of like how he does his movies like in that movie as well. So it made me appreciate
mhm.
Apocalypse Now like after I watched Godfather the other day. So like looking back on it.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, good stuff.
But it's definitely one of those movies that I know that I'm gonna want to go back like eventually like soon like to rewatch it just because I feel like there's so much
Oh, for sure. I bought the Blu-rays for both of them, and they both have audio commentary tracks with Francis Ford Coppola, and I want to watch them with the audio commentary because I want to hear him talk about the making of the movie
You'll have to send those
and
to me
whatever.
when you're done with it so I can,
Okay.
or just tell me about it because that sounds really interesting.
Yeah,
Especially because then you're learning more about the movie, so that'll be nice.
for sure.
Well, then
Well,
we
cool.
watched part two, so what did you think about that one?
Yeah. So it was. I was really excited to finally watch part two, um, because it's another it's another Godfather movie, and for me, I felt like this movie was. It felt like a natural extension of the first movie.
Yeah.
Like it it felt like a sequel that had purpose. Like there's a place for a Godfather sequel, which sequels are pretty hit or miss just in general. I mean, there's so many movies that have sequels that are just terrible or just never as good as the first one. And I really like the sequel a lot, but I don't think it's quite as good as the first one, but it's not too far behind it.
No, I completely agree.
I think for me the thing about the second one, um well, I think I enjoyed watching Michael's character in this movie a lot, but the thing that I loved so much about the first one is watching him, become the person that he is in part two. And in this one, there's not as much of a character arc. I mean, there still is, but it's just
Yeah.
not as drastic, obviously. But still a great movie. Um, it really, even just thinking about it now, like both the movies feel like such a blur. Like I'm like, wait, which one is,
Yeah.
did this happen in the first one or the second one? Because I watched them, within a couple days of each other, and they feel so. Uh, the second one feels so much like the first one, um, that it just feels like one big movie.
It's like you're watching a series on like Netflix or something like that, and
Yeah.
like I feel like in this part too, like you're learning about, the father, like in his life, like before he came to America, and then you're seeing him like develop into his role and how he started it, like when he got married and then he had the kids, and then flashes back to Michael and like what he's doing, like in the mafia, to how what they're going to continue to do, and when that in Vegas or Cuba or Miami, like all those kind of things. So I like getting the different perspectives and the flashbacks, like in this movie. And I loved Robert De Niro in the movie. He did such a good job.
Yeah.
And
He was great.
what's funny is because like at first, like when they showed his character, I didn't like think anything of it. But then there was like one scene where I can't remember what it is, but he's like just talking. I'm like, oh yeah, that's Robert De Niro. I knew he was in the movie, but now I'm finally like seeing him in it. And it's just so interesting to see him like in his young self, because I've seen like some of the other movies that he's been in when like
Mhm.
back in this time area or whatever, like in the 70s. But this one, like for like it was like the first time where like I didn't catch that it was him like in the very beginning. But I enjoy to see his character arc as well, in this part too, just seeing him go from just this guy working like at a store, and then now he, when he has that whole like conversation with that renter of like the apartment building or whatever, and the guy comes back and he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Like, you can have your money back." And it's like, man, what did he do? Like, we know that he killed like someone, and now he's probably gonna have like owner of this turf or whatever. But what has he done throughout this time? And so, I mean, it would have been nice to see a little bit more of like Vito's dealings like in New York City and stuff, but I feel like they really did do a good job playing both, like the flashbacks and then in the current time, like in the 50s and stuff. So
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was pretty great how they handled that too. I thought, yeah, having the flashbacks with Vito was cool, and I think it worked really well. Like I think in a lot of movies they would do something like that, but they wouldn't commit to it. Like there's so many movies that do that but don't commit as much to it, they'll
Yeah.
show, like a couple quick flashbacks, like so you're like, okay, so now you know a little bit about that. But they really, they kept going back to it, and I was like, oh, this is like a big part of this movie
Mm-hmm.
is seeing Robert De Niro. And I really, I thought it was good. It was a strong point in the movie for me. Um, And I really liked in this one, I loved I think my favorite part of this one was um the relationship and conflicts with Fredo,
Yeah.
his brother,
Yeah.
Michael and Fredo. I thought that was really good because it was um I felt so scared for Fredo because I'm like, man, I is Michael gonna kill him or
I
what?
know.
Because
That's
it
like
seemed
the
like it.
first one where like something's gonna happen, but you're still not sure if it's
Hmm.
gonna happen or not.
Yeah. Oh, and I loved when they were in Cuba and they were at the
Party.
at the party or whatever, and you just see Michael like kind of in the background, and he's just watching Fredo.
Waiting for him to slip up.
And uh-huh. And then it was that moment, and Michael already knew, but it was when what was the other guy's name? The guy when he introduced them, and they pretended like they didn't know each other. I can't remember his name. The dude that he was working with.
Oh,
But he was like, "Oh yeah, nice to meet you," or whatever. But Michael could tell right then. He's like, "Yep, you've been talking to him."
oh yeah,
And I was
exactly.
like, "Oh
And then I
shoot!"
feel like the whole movie you're like waiting for
Right?
him to like just kill Fredo, but you get to the whole
Yeah.
movie and then finally at the end when you see him on the boat, you're like, "Yep, peace out, bro. See
Yeah.
you later." But like that's what like I
Yeah.
enjoyed about like the second one with Michael was just he doesn't take lightly like any um what's it called like backstabbing or anything like that or
Mm-hmm.
um crossing him or something like that. And so whenever you
Yeah.
saw something like that, you're like, yeah, see you later, man. Like
Bye. Yeah.
you did it to yourself. You
See ya.
shouldn't have done it, man. So
Yep. Yep. And the scene with when Fredo kind of was breaking down to him and telling him how it sucks being the oldest brother, but I'm just like I'm just here, and then you're my younger brother who's now the boss, and I have to listen to you and all this stuff, and how it's hard for him, and it kind of sucks because he's like, what the hell, man?
so why did that happen again? Like
Well,
it's because wasn't he in charge of like protecting his dad? Or was that someone else? Or was he just in Vegas and that dealings and then they just
I think it was one of those things where I, I Vito, I think he always from the beginning he wanted Michael even before Michael was really a part of the family. Like in the first movie where Tom Hagen, he's like, "Hey man," like when he was joining the military or whatever, he's like, "Your dad has big plans for you," and Michael's like,
oh yeah.
not for me. He's like, I have big plans for myself. I'm gonna do what I want to do. So I think Vito had always wanted Michael because because Michael obviously is a great leader, and um, the other brother is hot headed, um, and then Fredo is just Fredo's just kind of a dingleberry. He's just not capable,
No. Not at all.
and so then Michael kind of stepped up and became the man that his dad always wanted him to
And I
be.
feel like oh
So
go ahead.
no, you
I
go.
was just saying I feel like that's like another one of those references where I feel like a lot of like future movies has taken Fredo's character and like implied or planted it like in their movies, where you have like this brother that is supposed to have this responsibility and the superiority, but he's not living up to that expectation. So you have like a younger sibling or someone else that looks down on him, and there's
Yep.
like this, battle that they have within each other. So
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that whole dynamic I thought was pretty interesting. And then I loved when um well, and then he tells he told the guys, or well, Michael, he told the guys, like, I don't want anything to happen to him while my mom's alive. It's like, if we're get like basically like, if we're gonna kill him, let's wait until mom dies and then we could kill him, kind of thing, because he didn't want to do that to his mom. But then later, his sister, I can't remember the name of the sister, but sister came to him and was like begging him to forgive Fredo, and then he did. And I loved that scene when he went out there and they just hugged. They just embraced each other right there. And I was like, cool.
well, that whole scene was good because it's Fredo. Like it feels like Fredo's like on his knees hugging him. Like
Yeah.
Michael's like standing up, just like I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
because Connie wants me to, but like deep down, like we're still in a rough patch or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think like the one scene that's always gonna stand out to me when I think of part two is when Michael's having the conversation with Kay about the baby.
Oh. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that scene was just, because this whole time he was like, you know what? I'm sorry about everything. I'll change. I know you had the miscarriage and I want to be here. I want to help. I'm sorry that you got to go through that. And she's like, nah, that wasn't a miscarriage. No, not at all, man. That was an abortion. And then she like just keeps talking about it, and you can just see the anger and the frustration start
Oh
boiling
yeah.
in like Michael's face, and you're just like, is he gonna kill her right now, or like what's gonna happen? And so like just that whole scene, just to see like his demeanor change, I thought Al Pacino did such a good job in that, and he really sold it right there. So
Yeah, it was great.
and it just had me thinking,
Yeah.
what about would situations be the same or would it be different if he had his bride in Sicily back in part one? What would have happened?
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
R.I.P. That car got the best of her.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, so um, what else did you enjoy about part two?
Mm, trying to think. Like, it's such a blur. I know there's more. There's a lot more that I liked, but I mean, overall, I loved both these movies, and I think that The Godfather Part One is perfect. Uh, for me, that's easy 5 out of 5 stars. Just a perfect example of what a movie can
Yeah.
be. And the second one is almost as good. It's almost as good. It's like right up there, but just not. Just doesn't make it all the way, but it's still great. And both movies won. They both won award. It's cool that a sequel like that was able
Oh
to
yeah.
it was able to win Best Picture as well and win all these awards. And it's number 3 on the top 250 on IMDb, and it's just as important in so many ways. But yeah, I love them both.
So you gave part
Yeah,
one 5 stars.
yeah, and then part two, I'd give it 4.5 out of 5. And maybe if I watch it again, maybe I'd even give it 5 stars. But I think 4.5 is what I'd give it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I feel
It's
like part one, just with how they did it, it was super enjoyable, and I definitely give it a 5 out of 5. Part two, I feel like some areas were just a little bit more slower pace, and
Mhm.
it could be just because it's a 3-hour movie, so they're trying to fit like a lot in there. So some areas are going to be slower than the others, and so I gave it like 4.5, but it's more of like a higher, like a close to a 5 star. So, and I agree with you. Like I know that if I watch part two again, like I probably would give it 5 stars just because there's so much going on in that 3 hour movie that maybe
Hmm.
there's stuff that I missed or that I'll appreciate a little bit more. But overall, they are really good movies, and it's nice to be able to now finally understand why so many people love, Godfather.
For sure. Yeah, and if for some reason if you're listening and you haven't ever seen The Godfather, Godfather Part 2, check them out. And if you have seen them all, let us know what's your favorite. And should we watch Part 3?
I kind of like want to watch
Cuz
part 3 now.
I do too. And you know what? I think I feel like it seems like it's still good, um but just not nearly as good as part one and part two because those are, I mean, almost perfect movies.
And I
So,
feel like from part 1 to part 2, you kind of like have this understanding of like what part 2 would probably going to be like. But I feel like from
hmm
part 2 to part 3, at least for me, I feel like I don't know what direction they would go. So for me, it's almost like I kind of want to watch it because I'm like, what are they going to do with the
yeah,
characters? Like, what's going to happen? So,
yeah, I'm curious too, and especially because this one was made in 1990,
yeah,
so it's like much later than the first two.
a little less than 20
Um,
years or something like that. So,
yeah. So yeah, I'm interested. I'm definitely gonna watch it. I'm sure it's worth watching, but I might wait a couple weeks or
yeah.
something before I
How
watch it.
long is part?
I just feel like it's 2 hours and 40 something minutes, I think. So still long, but not as long as the first two.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely want to watch it as well. So, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you want to discuss in this week's podcast episode, or?
Well, I had a random thought, a random question. Since we were talking about a sequel, I was just wondering, do you have what's your favorite sequels? Um, or what do you think are some of the worst sequels
Where's some of the
that
worst
you've seen?
sequels?
Yeah, like what are the bad sequels, good sequels? I feel like there's plenty of examples of both, but um, I don't know.
Well,
I was
I
wondering what
feel
your
like
favorite.
a good one is Blade Runner.
Yeah,
I feel like a bad one is like
I,
Independence Day.
oh yeah, I never saw that.
I feel like the new like Planet of the Apes. I feel like that whole trilogy was really good, and I feel like they were able to live up to that.
Yeah,
Like the
I
sorry, I'm
agree.
talking
They
about
were
like the
good.
newer ones.
The new,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I got you.
Mad Max.
Yeah,
So
Evil Dead 2,
yeah.
Toy Story 2.
No, there's definitely like a lot of good ones, like Indiana Jones, like that. Like there's like some good ones.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and for me, actually, Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2, I feel like was a good
Yeah,
sequel right there. So yeah, I feel like
for sure.
there is quite a bit of them, and like I'm just like
Mm-hmm.
looking at a list right now, and I feel like a lot
Yeah,
of these I'm like, oh yeah, like that was like a good like sequel, but some of them like definitely weren't as good as the first one,
yeah, yeah. There are
like
a lot of
Jaws.
great sequels. Yeah, the Jaws sequels are not good. I, I can't remember what I've seen. I think all of the Jaws sequels, and there's maybe it was two that I kind of liked, but none of them are even close to as good as the original, obviously. But there's a lot like that. Same with like Tremors. There's a lot of those kind of movies. Like, and we were talking about Starship
Yeah,
Troopers. Like, I haven't even seen those sequels, but I already know exactly like what they are, you know.
no,
And same with
exactly.
Tremors. Like all those sequels are just kind of straight to DVD doo doo.
I would say like I would even say like even Jumanji kind of too, like that was good, and then
Yeah,
when they had like some of these other ones come out, it's not going to be as good as the first one or something.
yeah.
What about Shrek? Shrek 2? Did you like that more?
Love Shrek 2. I don't know. I haven't seen all the Shreks in a while, so I
Is
don't
that going
know.
to be a future film club? Just kidding.
I I think it should be.
Watch
I
like
think we
what,
should.
all 4 or 5 of them?
Yeah, and Puss in
Yeah,
Boots.
exactly.
I think
The
that we should
holiday
do it.
specials.
Yes,
That's funny.
I'd be down. Be down for that.
No, but I do think that there
Um,
are like some good sequels, but I
yeah,
think they're on par with the first one, but I I feel like Godfather, in my opinion, would be the only one where I could see where some people for sure would say they like part 2 more than part 1.
yeah.
But
There's definitely. It seems like there's people out there that think that.
so,
So, which makes sense. I can see it.
oh yeah. But I feel like a lot of these like sequel movies, like the first one is still good, but they did have success with the second one, and it is a good like
Hmm.
sequel to it, but not as good as the first one. So,
Yeah, for sure.
but I mean that
Cool.
we have our next week's picks for our film club.
Yes.
We're doing a little bit of a curveball for all you listeners out there. So if you're looking forward to what we're gonna do, Cody, what movie are you picking?
Well, so Nate told me what he was picking, and then that influenced
Oh,
what
so
I
you want me to
picked
share mine
because,
first and why?
well, it doesn't matter. I'll share mine first, but I just want you to know that I was like, this is a movie that I wanted to watch already because, as I said earlier, I've been watching all of Robert Altman's films recently. Well, not all, but I've been watching a bunch of them, and I want to watch some more. And one of his films is the 1980 live action Popeye movie. So we're gonna watch Popeye,
Popeye.
starring Robin
Yep,
Williams.
R.I.P.
Yep.
And then my pick for this week is Waterworld. So,
Yeah.
then that's one of
I'm
those
excited.
movies that I remember like watching on TV, but I never like fully finished it or really can remember like what it's about. But there's just like some scenes I can still visually like remember. But yeah, Waterworld.
Awesome. I can't wait. I've seen it before, but it's been a really long time, and I watched it in school, I think.
That's
And
crazy that
I'm
you watched
excited.
in school.
Excited. Yeah, I don't know why. I have no idea why we watched that movie, but we did. But yeah, I'm excited to watch it, and I think it will be fun to talk about it next week. So, if you don't want to be spoiled for Waterworld and Popeye, then go out and watch them. Popeye's on Amazon Prime, so feel free to watch Popeye if you want. And then I don't know about uh, Waterworld, but might be somewhere streaming maybe.
Waterworld. Let me just check real quick. And that's like once again, that's a nice thing about Letterboxd app is you can just look it up on your phone or whatever to find where it's at streaming or something. It's on Stars.
Yeah. Oh, okay, cool.
It's on Stars, or
Cool.
you can rent it. So
yeah, if you want to watch them and you don't want to be spoiled, then check them out. But also, if you feel like if you want to listen to the podcast next week, these are probably the two out of the movies that we've watched so far. I would guess these are the two that you could probably skip on and maybe just listen to us talk about if you want.
yeah.
It'll be fun either way. But yeah, if you want to check them out, do it.
Well, we want to thank all of our listeners out there for continuing to support this podcast and
Thanks, guys.
follow on this journey with us. So, and if you have suggestions of like movies that you want us to watch or something like that, or you want us to discuss, like let us know and we'll discuss these movies as well. So
yeah, tweet us. What's our Twitter? It's just 2D Film Club, right?
yes, it is. And we have a
tweet us.
YouTube too if you wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, you can comment on there too. We'll see that. Or if you have any questions that you want to ask us, whatever it might be, just tweet us or comment, and we'll answer you.
Comment below and we'll let you know.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, good talking to you. We'll see you next week.
Bye.